And we're back. Video number 11. I'm going to start rounding that back because we've got the pretty hefty front and back here. Let's round this back a little bit. We're still using our fishtail. And I'm just going to work at getting some of that bulk off of there because the arms are not sticking out as far as they are in the front from the body. And so we want to make sure we're going to give ourselves plenty of room to do that. We'll shape everything else a little bit later in terms of getting the shoulders not as square as they are. And so let's just spend a few minutes getting this back shaped out, thinning that down a little bit. Not going to worry about the bandana yet. If we're going to put one on him, I think I may do a bandana on him, but we're not going to worry about that right yet. Trim up a little bit of this on the front because that's going to be trimmed down quite a bit. We want to get down to where we've got a gradual transition between the chest and the head. We don't want a lot of bulk, and then all of a sudden you see a real sharp line veering up towards something else. Okay, got some real square shoulders there. We're going to leave those there because if we don't do a bandana, we could do a shirt with a collar here. That's another way. Anyway, we were working last time on these boots. Let me see if I can't get those roughly shaped in where we need to go, because I'd really like to see what that looks like. What it's going to leave us in terms of whether we want to leave the legs apart, wide apart, narrow, or whatever. Because at this point we still have room to take off out here or in here, and it's just going to depend on what it feels like when we get down to it. But I wanted to shape the boots down so they're not quite so thick from here, from the bottom to the top. So we're just getting out that extra little bit of wood in between. That'll give us a straight shot through the middle. Don't know whether we're going to have enough time to do painting on this carving, but we're going to try. I really think that'll tie it all together when we get to the point where we're done and decide to paint. Then this might actually turn out to be something we've got time for. Looks like the boots of the shoes are about the same size in terms of how high they are and of the shape. And so I'm just going to pencil in a few lines for pants, because if we're going to do the pants here, whether we have a cuff or not, we want to know where that line is going to go so we can get that. Okay, got the center line or the seam line. Pull that one back here a little bit more. It's not going to go down into the boot, is it? There we go. All right. The center line there. Take some of these edges off of this belly because he's starting to look out of proportion. We'd originally cut in this line as the belly being right here, but let's go ahead and trim a little bit of that off. All right, I'm going to go ahead and make a command decision to go ahead and put a bandana on this guy, and so I'm going to pencil that in so that it comes here, part of the bandana, and the rest of it, the longer piece, goes up here like that. So he's got a bandana. Let me get a marker and I'll draw that on there and maybe that'll show up a little bit more. But it'll have the bandana coming down here. And we'll make that bandana all the way up to his neck with a little, maybe a little bit of indentation right there. And we'll have that bandana coming all the way back here. Let me pencil that in as well. Because back here we'll have the knot somewhere about right here. And then we'll have a couple of tails of the bandana. It's probably a little too fat and not. So we'll have something that looks like that, which means the bandana will come around here like this, top of those shoulders. I don't like looking at those shoulders, so I'm going to go ahead and trim them back just a little bit. I know that they're going to go back into the body, but I just don't like those harsh lines staring at me. It gives me a weird feeling when I see them. All right, kind of heading that way, kind of where we wanted to go. Still not as deep on the arms as we are in here. We're fairly deep in here. Let me see if I can match this one with the other side, because the other side is fairly indented into the body. Looking a little better there. But as deep as this is here, we've got to make it deep out here. So I'm going to use my smaller fishtail gouge, and we're just going to pull some of that so it looks like the arm is going to really be rounded when we get down to it. We can't do that without having some depth to it. So that looks a little better. Okay. All right. So hopefully by now you can start to see where we're at. Let's go up here to the hat, because we haven't worked on this hat much at all. I'm going to have him have a hat with a brim. And so what we're going to do, and this will actually be wider out than this. This will look wider once we get that out of there. Anyway, I'm going to take those corners off. And those are fairly easy to do. Now what that's going to do, for those of you that have never done maybe a cowboy hat or a wide brimmed hat, it's going to make it look weird as thick as this is. But understand that if the brim curls up like that, then what we're going to end up with is a fairly hefty looking cowboy hat. We'll take off these bottoms down here, but I don't want to take off as much as I did in the front. I want to leave as much back here because the hat's generally wider in the back than it is up front. And we can play around with that dimension as we go along and have some fun with it. Okay. About right now is where I start playing around with the back, and I want to trim that back off a little bit. And it's easier just to roll my knife here, choke up on it a little bit more, and we're starting around the back of that hat. When we do that, it's going to allow us to drop this back of the crown in there, but we're now just rounding off that hat, trying to make it look like it's gonna look like a hat eventually. See that? Take off the square corners. Now what we'll end up doing, we'll end up with the hat brim coming up like this. We'll trim this down on the side so it'll approximate this curve here. but all that in the middle is going to come out. So I can take some of it out right here with my knife. This is end grain. Goes straight up and down. That end grain runs this, the grain runs this way, so it means up here at the top, this is end grain. So I got to be careful what I do because it's going to want to very easily break off at the front. If you know how a cowboy hat, how the brim goes up and down, we've got quite a bit more to take off there. But anyway, we've got plenty of time to do that. Okay. I want to go back to the feet because I don't like how wide these legs are. So I'm just going to spend a couple minutes thinning them down. I want to thin them down so we give them a backside. See how I cut that in there? So I don't want to go all the way down to the feet because I'm going to leave some wrinkles in here. And having some space to leave wrinkles in there allows me to get that bottom in there. I mean, if his leg is going backwards, not standing straight up because your legs are not perfectly vertical, you can leave a spot in here for an exaggerated joint, like the knee joint or closer down here to the ankle. But we can leave that and then we can add some wrinkles in there. So that's what we're going to do here in just a little bit. We'll just take off a little bit of this wood just to make sure he's got a back end. Cowboys can't really sit on them horses very well if they don't have any muscles back there to hang on with, do they? So bring that down a little bit more. Almost looking bow-legged there. My grandfather used to sing a song. Love to go swimming with bow-legged women, and I have no idea what the rest of the song was, but it was just, I don't know what that meant, what it was supposed to mean, but it's just one of those things that I always remember. Like my dad would always say, "Amen, Brother Ben, shot a rooster, killed a hen." No idea what that means either, but Southern sayings don't necessarily have to make sense. They just are. So, all right, we're starting to work on him. Let me work on that area right in there because that's going to be where the hand is. So I'm gonna do that by a roll cut. I'm going to go in and I'm going to roll back out. If you think your knife is too thick or too heavy, we can use another one. Preferably one that's smaller, thinner, and allows that roll cut. Although this Pinewood Forge knife does it, let me do it with another knife. You go in and turn your knife 90 degrees. And you're cutting that out, and I'll show you when we're done here how that shows a bulge of some sort right there at the pocket. See that little bulge right there? You want to leave that little bulge there because you want to show that there's a hand in those breeches. You don't want them to look like you stuck your hands in there and there's not enough room to do so. You want to leave a little bit of a bulge there so that you're showing the hand is in there somewhere. And so after you've done a few of these, you'll start to understand where it is, and then when you get it painted and you do your dry brush and whatever, that'll show that there's a hand in there. You'll trim up the square edges or whatever, but it works on both of these. So both hands and front hands in the back pocket. This Drake knife that I'm using is very flexible. I love the flexibility of it. And it allows me to do some things with it that I can't do with other knives. But there's things I can do with other knives that I can't do with this one. It's not a real heavy duty knife because it's thinner, And so it makes it difficult to really do a lot of hogging out. Simply because I don't want to put too much torque on it and then find out that I've got to send it back to Gil to get it repaired, or I got to call him up and say, can I have another one? I'll send you the check. But that bulge just kind of pops right out of there when you do it right. Okay. All right. We're at 15 minutes. I better stop now. It'll take forever to load these videos up if I don't. So we'll stop there. This is video number 11. We'll start 12 here in just a little bit.